The Earth breathes in and out. Why is water disappearing all over our planet? Well, we noticed that after the huge earthquakes in eastern Turkey, the Mediterranean seems to be losing its water. It started from Turkey, Syria, Israel, Tunisia, and Morocco, even Italy. The canals, of course, in Venice are drying up because of the lack of snow in the Alps feeding the rivers that bring water to the canals. But the Mediterranean is also very shockingly drying up. And where is all this water going to? Scientists around the world are recording something frightening. Lakes, rivers, and waterfalls are disappearing all over the planet. The drying up of lakes is a frequent phenomenon nowadays. For example, when torrential rains hit part of the United States, in Bolivia, the opposite happened. Drought caused the drying up of Pupo, the second largest lake with an area of 3,000 square kilometers and a depth of about 3 meters, about 10 feet. The satellite images show January 2016. The lake was completely dry, and this became a tragedy for local residents and harsh predictions about the future of many lakes on a global scale. China's Laguna de Aculeo, Chile's Laguna de Aculeo, 6-meter deep lake, 14 square kilometers in area, dried up 7 years ago. In just 7 years, the long-term drought in April 2019 left a layer of mud and green vegetation in its place. Animals and birds died from this drought, and they lost their main source of water, and people still have to stock up on bottled water. And here we have a map showing desertification of various areas around the world as well. Now, California's Lake Oroville, the second largest reservoir in the state, is rapidly disappearing. The water level of the once deepest body of water, for the first time in history, dropped to a record low and became so low that the local hydroelectric power plant was forced to refuse service. Now, the drought is not the only reason for the disappearance of lakes. It's the opinion of scientists. The process is not fully understood. The phenomenon of the disappearance of entire lakes is a reason to think that some processes have occurred in the Earth's bowels. Also, apart from lakes, rivers are disappearing as well. A devastating drought in Brazil and Argentina in 2021 resulted in the shallowing of the Paraná River, the second longest in South America after the Amazon River, are at their lowest in 77 years. This led to the fact that Argentina declared a state of emergency for 180 days. Agriculture found itself in a difficult position, as Argentina ships had to reduce their tonnage by about 20%, which led to an increase in transport costs and a decrease in agricultural exports. The water in the Atoyac River in Mexico disappeared overnight after a giant fissure opened through which the water escaped. Residents of the village of San Fermina, next to which a crack formed, claimed that they heard a roar at night and felt the earth tremble, and when going out into the street they saw a crack in the riverbed where the water flowed. Local officials said the crack, which begins 3 kilometers from the river source and is about 30 meters wide, continues to widen and create new cracks. So it's a new fault line. Now, Mexico, as we know, is very earthquake prone, and it's got volcanoes as well. Now, the river was the only source of water for the 10,000 strong state of Veracruz and supplied water to thousands of families, as well as sugar plantations, which provided income for most of the local residents. The Great Indus River in Pakistan today also remains almost without water, and the size of its delta has decreased by more than 5 times. Several settlements along the coast were deserted and hundreds of people had to leave, and this despite the fact that the Indus River Basin is a water time bomb that can explode at any moment. The complex relationship between India and Pakistan, as well as the growing population of these countries, could lead to nuclear conflict for water resources. In 2016, the once raging Slims River in Canada has practically disappeared. Once it was 500 meters wide and 3 meters deep, about 10 feet deep, but in just 4 days, it stopped flowing. It turned into a long, narrow lake. So what's going on here? The Rio Grande River, important for the residents of the U.S. and Mexico, also disappears. The Rio Grande was once a stormy river and is translated from Spanish as Great River. But today it does not even enter the Gulf of Mexico because it has become so shallow that the remaining waters are completely dismantled for the needs of the population and farms with their endless fields and herds of animals. At the moment, there are lots of rivers in the world they're drying up. It's a threat of drought, including large ones from Colorado to the Tigris River. Drying rivers can be found in all climatic zones and on all continents. According to researchers by U.S. scientists, the water level in the world's largest rivers has decreased significantly over the past 50 years. Between 51% and 60% of Earth's rivers and streams periodically stop flowing or dry up during some part of the year. The situation is the same with waterfalls. Iguazu, one of the most majestic waterfalls in the world, located on the border of Brazil and Argentina and almost 3 kilometers wide, reduced the volume of flow by 5 times in recent years. The cause is believed to be the worst drought that has hit South America in recent years. And in another continent, in Africa, the world's second largest waterfall, Victoria, also in 2019, was on the verge of extinction. The highest waterfall in Ecuador, San Rafael, in 2020, instead of a seething waterfall, a thin, barely noticeable stream now flows over the rocks. Many scientists associate the shallowing of waterfalls, rivers, and lakes with seasonality, but we see how water is rapidly leaving on all continents. So where is it going? This means that it is a planetary process. After all, nature constantly warns us that we are gradually crossing the red line, and this inevitable is approaching very quickly. The water goes away even when there is no drought. For example, in China, 28,000 rivers disappeared despite frequent floods and heavy rainfall, which is more than 50% of the rivers of the entire country. Scientists associate this with accelerated economic growth. Others, over the past 30 years, more than 10,000 rivers disappeared in Ukraine, and wells are drying up. The problem of water scarcity is visible even in England, where a quarter of the rivers and half of the small streams are also endangered. India's annual water crisis affects nearly 1 million people. You can enumerate endlessly, so a natural question arises: why and where does all this water disappear to? Now our planet is entering a cycle of planetary cataclysms that occur every 12,000 years. During this cycle, there's a galactic impact on the core of our planet, as a result of which is an unbalanced and begins to jump. Because of this, the planet accelerates its rotation and begins to expand along the equator. Microcracks are formed, and water from reservoirs go into great depths, and this water intake by the planet can be compared to annihilation. Now the planet breathes in, and someday it will breathe out. As a result of the acceleration of the planet's rotation, its centrifugal force is accelerated, and magma begins to rise to the surface of the Earth's crust and heat up underground waters. Nowadays we observe a rapid melting of glaciers from the bottom up, heating of deep layers of the world's oceans, melting of permafrost, as well as cases when water in wells boils in front of people. The only exclusion would be Western Siberia, where at the depth of 1.5 kilometers, an underground hot ocean of fresh water was found. Its area was about 3 million square kilometers, and the volume is 1 trillion cubic kilometers, hence 2 times the size of the Mediterranean Sea. Such seething, boiling seas are found not only under Siberia, but also in many other regions. To find out exactly where the underground oceans lie, scientists from University of Washington processed about 600,000 seismograms. The results turned out to be a sensation. Under the eastern part of the continent of Eurasia and under North America, there are huge reservoirs of water that are larger in volume than the Arctic Ocean. And here it is more interesting because here we come to the causes of the biblical flood. After all, we know that during the flood, in a very short time, the mountains became the bottom of the ocean because these ancient reservoirs of water burst. From time immemorial, it was said that the planet breathes. The earth absorbs moisture and then it shrinks and it gives it back. And this happens instantly, and it can happen in one night. Can you imagine? So when magma gets to these huge reserves of water, it will begin to avalanche, which is why we now see the greenhouse effect and global warming associated with it all over the planet. When water in huge quantities comes out from under the earth, that is, when the planet breathes out, this will lead to incessant rainstorms and will entail catastrophic floods. The rise of water for kilometers awaits us, and only the tops of the mountains will remain. Therefore, today we are caught in the crosshairs when humanity decides whether it will exist or not. The guardian will be the climate, the most terrible enemy, which is merciless in its manifestation and which took the lives of many civilizations before, the deluge, for example. Humanity has already entered this period of climactic change, but because of the separation of our consumer format, we don't resist and don't even know what all this is about. We're starting to fight CO2 emissions, improve the environment, but in terms of climate, it's all useless. In fact, if we want to save our life on the planet, we need to act as a united front. And we're starting to, the only way to do that, to guarantee a safe future, because for this there are such transitional periods for humanity to choose, whether we'll continue to live as a single civilization or like many other people who live in the same consumer format. So this is an interesting theory of what could happen to the water, breathing in and breathing out. In other words, it takes in the water and at one point it starts bringing it spouting it back out. This is on Soul Ask. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box.